Clerks, my good friends, I am finally getting to sit down and talk about a movie I've been waiting for a good 15 to 16 years to come out. It's no surprise to anybody, I'm a massive movie nerd. I love my independent flicks. 1994 is considered one of the best years out there, with two such great classics coming out as Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction and one Kevin Smith's Clerks. Now, Clerks is one of the movies, if not the movie, that got me into movies proper. Like, it was counterculture to a T. Not to mention, it was also from the guy who did Mallrats, which, unfortunately, I am not a Kevin Smith purist. I did not see Clerks before Mallrats. I saw Mallrats first, but that is the movie that made me want to catch Clerks. So that was 1994, and then we jump ahead and we get to 2006 and we get Clerks 2, which I had a lot of trepidation about. What are we doing here? At the core of myself, I was kind of like, I need to see more. I need to see more. Now, the big problem with that was we were no longer in the store. We were now in a movies. But that was fine. That was fine. We were still building this View-esque universe as we are going. So Clerks 2 ended up being a massive, massive surprise and being almost as good as the first. Still not as good as the first, but almost. And then here we are. 2022, let's be honest, Kevin Smith's career has fallen. Jay and Silent Bob reboot, I wasn't a massive fan of. Smith hasn't really done a whole great deal recently that's really tickled me, that's really got to the core of me, in the same way that Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, all those movies got me. I genuinely hoped that with Clerks 3, the third part of this trilogy coming out, it was with low expectations, but with hope in my heart. Please do all those amazing, wonderful things and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell. It will let you know whenever I'm putting reviews out, notifications for interviews, all that kind of thing. You'll get all of that good stuff, and I won't have to hound you down to tell you that there's new content. I've got loads more reviews coming in, I've got loads more interviews in the works. But this is Nerdly Out Loud. We have gone off the rails. My name is Kevin Halden. I'm that excited to talk about this movie. And we are the official channel of nerdly.co.uk, your favourite British home for news, reviews, and exclusive interviews. We like to cover everything from the big budget to the low budget to the no budget, with a special keen interest on the lower end of the scale. Let's get into Clerks 3. If you've seen any of my videos before, you will know what my deal is, and my deal is simply this. I will start with the plot of this movie, then I will move into the cast and characters of this movie, then I will get into what I did and what I didn't like about this movie, and then give you my final Nerdly Out Loud rating for Clerks 3. Now, what I will say is I am going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but there are certain story beats that I do want to talk about, so I'll probably drop a couple of spoilers. If I feel like I'm about to do that, I will give you a little warning. But yeah, let's get into the review. Let's talk about the plot. And here we are back at the Quick Stop. We are 15 to 16 years later, where we left off, where the guys had bought the Quick Stop over after Randall had accidentally set it on fire. Or it might have been terrorists, we don't know. And life has kind of just gone on for these two guys. Where we are led to is that Randall Graves, played wonderfully again by the brilliant Jeff Anderson. I'm so glad he came back for the third movie. I know we were going to be doing the third movie a little while back, but apparently Jeff Anderson just didn't want to do it, or just dropped out, just said no. So Randall ends up having a heart attack. It kind of makes him readdress his life a little bit. Life just kind of passed him by, but he does have a wealth of stories from the Quick Stop. He does have a wealth of stories to tell and customers that he's dealt with over the years. So he has now decided that he's going to make a movie about his life. I mean, let's be honest, Kevin Smith did have, I believe it was a heart attack. He did survive, and now he's basically going back to his original movie of Clerks, and he's decided that these characters are going to tell his story within his story about his story. They're basically remaking Clerks, which is a bit of a neat concept. I did kind of like it. I mean, Smith's already sort of done this with Jay and Silent Bob reboot in a way, because it was like the sequel reboot-quel or whatever you wanted to call it. But at its absolute core, this is once again the story of Randall and Dante. Randall taking Dante for granted, Dante wanting more out of life. It's very much that story again, but let's be honest, Clerks 1, Clerks 2, and parts of Clerks 3, that is the magic of this trilogy. These two characters, these two actors, they know these characters inside and out, which is why, in a minute, something I say is probably going to sound kind of weird. But yeah, let's get into the cast and the characters. And I'm going to start with our two main leads, Jeff Anderson and Brian O'Halloran. I'll start with Jeff Anderson because, quite honestly, Jeff's just doing what he does. He's excellent in this movie at times. He's a great comic actor. And while he's doing a different kind of comedy that I'm used to in the Clerks movies, I have to say, he's still hitting his beats. And he's trying to be a bit more serious because obviously his character has just had like this life-altering moment, this thing that could have killed him. Now he's got a bit of a stark realization that he's just been pissing about for his whole life. But this was my main issue with the character, was we kind of learned this at the end of Clerks 2. We kind of dealt with this. Now 15 years later, the characters have aged 15 years, but we're now 15 years later, and it seems like Randall has to relearn this through a heart attack, kind of doesn't learn it, and then towards the end of the movie, kind of relearns it. Like, I don't fault the actor for this. I think he is absolutely wonderful in the movie. He gets me in a few moments, like, where there's some really heartwarming stuff, and it does get to me. And I also like the way he plays off the blasé kind of arrogant nature to himself, or ignorant nature to the character. So Brian O'Halloran, this is by far the best performance Brian O'Halloran has put in this trilogy. However, at times, it's also the worst performance he's put in this entire trilogy. I don't know what was going on. Like, at the start of this movie, the first 20 to 30 minutes, it really felt like Brian O'Halloran didn't know who Dante was anymore. Like, I get it, it's been a while, but he just didn't really... Nothing was clicking for me. I was kind of, where's Dante? He's still a whiny bitch, but where is Dante? And then you get the meat of his story, and that is... compelling. It hits you right in the feels, but there's just new kind of layers to it that I just thought it's not embodying Dante for me. Like, and that's my problem. That's absolutely my problem, because I've grown up with this trilogy. I've grown up with Kevin Smith movies. So as I grow up, I expect these characters to grow up. I expect Kevin Smith to grow up. It seems like he's kind of just got stuck. There is some absolutely outstanding writing in this movie. However, we saw it in Chase and Amy. We saw it in Jersey Girl. We've seen him write like this. So it's no big surprise. I just kind of thought he was going to grow these characters as we grow with them. Yeah, so Brian O'Halloran is wonderful. He stole my heart. He stole my heart. I want to talk about Elias, Trevor Furman, because easily one of the standouts of Clerks 2, and I was so happy to see him coming back. I was so happy to see him reprising Elias. However, this is not Elias. Like, I'm talking about growth in other characters not really happening. Elias has like a ton of growth, and they just totally... Like, he's no longer the little God-fearing guy. He kind of becomes a Satanist, which is kind of like part of the story because it happens because of the whole Randall situation. But dude, like, it just got stupid. And every time he comes in, he's wearing a new costume. He's getting a little bit more gothy, a little bit more emo, a little bit more satanic. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. That is one of the things in this movie that I don't think stuck the landing. There's a lot of great things that do stick the landing. Other legacy characters, of course, Marilyn Gigliotti comes back as Veronica. It was amazing to see her. I mean, I've seen her in quite a few different little bits and pieces recently, and it's always good to see Marilyn Gigliotti kicking about. But it was great to see her back as Veronica, and it's like she never left the character. I mean, we didn't get her in Clerks 2. Here we have her in Clerks 3. It was just beautiful to see her back. It was beautiful to see her and Dante's relationship. I would have liked to have expanded on that a little bit more, but it is what it is. That's what we got. Obviously, Jay and Silent Bob are back, because you're not going to do a Clerks movie without Jay and Silent Bob. Their characters are Jay and Silent Bob. They are doing exactly what they've done for the last 30 odd years, and we're always going to pay money to watch that. We love Jane, Silent Bob. So it's fine. A quick mention to Rosario Dawson. We won't talk about her too much, but we'll explain that in the next section. She's back. She's awesome. I love the character of Becky, but I kind of feel like Kevin Smith just sort of like hit the jackpot by Rosario Dawson being in the movie, which is great, but I love seeing her back as Becky, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. So let's get into what I did and what I didn't like about this movie. The relationship between Dante and Randall should always be the, one true pairing of any trilogy, any show, or anything like that. But Jeff Anderson and Brian O'Halloran work extremely well together. They are the definitive odd couple in my eyes. They embody everything about me and my best friend. We all know these characters. We've all met these characters. We are all one of these characters. And that's what has always got me with Clerks. And in this movie, at its very core, it's hard to see at times, but at its very core, that relationship is beautiful, it's wonderful, it works, and it always will work. Now, this will hit a little bit of spoiler territory, so if you don't know everything about the movie, quite early on in the movie, so spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, quite early on in the movie, we find out that Rosario Dawson's character of Becky has actually died. And when she died, she was with child, Dante's child, because they got married. The scenes that we get with Dante and Rosario Dawson are amazing, because clearly she's not actually there. She's sort of like he's imagining her. She's coming to him to sort of at times of need, if you know what I mean. They absolutely hit, and this is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm going to try and keep things spoiler free, but this is why I needed to talk about this particular thing, because within this movie that is a little bit of a hodgepodge of a mess. It is a mess, but within this movie there is a phenomenal masterclass in storytelling. The whole thing about Dante and Becky and Becky being dead and Dante still, once she's gone, just reverting back to that role of doing whatever he thinks people need of him, doing whatever he thinks people want, and he's just gone back to being the workhorse of everything and forgoing any real pleasure he can have in his life because he feels like he's not worth it. It killed me. It killed me at times to watch this character be back there. I hated it. But I mean, that's why it's so good. And when I say about Brian O'Halloran hitting the top notes and acting his mother effing ass off, those are the scenes. Those are the scenes he does it in. He just brings you down to this level of like, I actually kind of feel like I know exactly what he's going through. Now, I'm a father of three beautiful girls. I've got my queen, my wife, and that's maybe why things like this hit me in those ways. And you know what? I'm a huge Rosario Dawson fan, but in those moments, these two actors, they are level pegging. And that's going to be the only time you'll hear me say that about Rosario Dawson and anyone else, because normally she's just wiping her ass with everyone on screen. Like, not literally, but normally that's what's going on. But in these scenes, he is hitting it, which is why when I talk about something I didn't like about the movie, it's annoying. I don't know what this is at times. The first half an hour of this movie is really, really jarring. Like, it seems to take a little while to get moving, and then when it does get moving, we pump the brakes for half an hour at the hospital, which was like just silly scene after silly scene about Randall's tiny junk, which, you know, this is what I mean though, like, Kevin Smith has not grown up. He's not progressed. Now, you know what, that's harsh. The dude has progressed, he has grown up, but it seems like within this story that is supremely compelling, to get to that, we have to root through some just nonsense. Just the tall grass. We don't need it all. I like to laugh, I like to have a joke, and I like my movies to be lighthearted, especially a Kevin Smith movie. But these characters, this is the third movie. This is the third movie. that I am spending with these characters, and I feel like I'm relearning these characters when I should feel like I have grown with these characters. But again, that's just me. That's just me. He's the storyteller. He's the auteur. He is the director. Something else I wasn't a massive fan of is the meta-ness of the whole thing. I quite like meta stuff. I quite like pop culture stuff, but it really just feels like self-masturbatory. Just, I am going to make a movie within a movie that is my movie of a movie that basically I want to make because I had this thing happen to me, and I'm going to put one of my characters from that first movie through that thing, and then he's going to remake the first movie, and it's going to be aces. I'm kind of done with Kevin Smith doing meta within meta within meta. I'm kind of done with it. Like, this is the guy who created the View-esque universe. This is the guy who, under my very nose, was creating this universe of characters that were going to traverse through movies, and some of their cousins were going to show up in other movies, but there was going to be a name in there you were going to know. There was going to be people in there that connected to this, that were there at the time this happened. That's the guy that I grew up loving, but I kind of don't need to be doing all that all the time. I'm not going to say it felt lazy, but it just felt unoriginal, if you know what I mean. And I hate saying that. Something that I did like was cameos galore. I mean, not as many cameos as the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, because that was just one after one after one after one after one. It was just constant cameos. But yeah, we get some Ben Affleck in there, which you gotta love. He does the lion face, lemon face, which is awesome. We got some Sarah Michelle Gellar in there, and some Freddie Prinze Jr. in there, which I wasn't really expecting to see either of those two, but fair dues. Get some Justin Long comes back as a nurse, which I really liked that role. I thought he was very good. Fred Armisen pops up at one point. We all know Harley Quinn Smith was going to turn up because he basically just makes movies to give her a career now, but also her real life boyfriend, husband, whatever he is, he also turns up in the movie as Blockchain Coltrane, Elias's friend who doesn't talk because he wants to be Silent Bob, I think. Is that like a commentary on the fact that he wants to be Harley Quinn's dad? I hope not. I really hope not. And I've got one last thing that I do want to give massive props about, but I'm going to leave that until the end of the video. And if you don't want to see that bit, don't watch that bit. I'll tell you when it's coming, but I'll talk about it at the end of the video. But yeah, let's get into my final rating. This is a hard one, and this video has actually kind of felt a little bit like therapy in a way, because I finished this movie and my heart was broken. My heart was absolutely broken, both in a good way and a bad way. Emotionally, you broke my heart. Like, it felt like the perfect send-off. It felt like the perfect way to end this trilogy. It felt like that. But the thing was, and this is the other thing that broke my heart, was I had to sift through some shit to get there. I had to really work through some just stupidness, some nonsense, and I get that's the way he writes. It's the way Kevin Smith writes, and I get that's where his head's at. I mean, if this is the movie we've got, this is the movie we were always going to get, I guess. And we have to think about it that way. There's no do-overs. There's no second chances. We're not going to remake the third part of a trilogy. What would be the point in that? And I wouldn't want him to, because this is clearly the story he wanted to tell. And I'm glad he did. And I'm glad he didn't go with the story he was going to tell with the now defunct script that everybody's kind of seen online and whatnot, because that would have been bad. We were paying a lot of homage to the original movie and some homage to the second movie. I really don't know. Like, the meta-ness of it kind of got in the way. Like, I know Clerks always does the pop culture, but it doesn't really do the meta commentary. It doesn't really delve into that. Like, it was its own special, unique little thing that I fell in love with. I fell in love with Kevin Smith's writing, his directing style. This was the reason I watch some of the movies I watch. It's the reason that I like a talkie talk movie. It's the reason that I like low budget movies, because Kevin Smith taught me that there is some great freaking movies out there, you know. But I'm going to give you my rating in two halves, and I'm going to say that all of the new stuff in this movie, like the meta stuff, the making the movie within a movie about a movie that is the movie of this guy's life, whatever. All of that stuff. I liked it, but I didn't like it enough. Like, it just felt like it just didn't hit any sort of level for me in that way. And I really just felt like I was going through a bunch of scenes to get to, the second part of how I'm going to review this movie. So for all of that, it's a 2. It's a 2 out of 5 for all of that. The stuff where we're dealing with Dante and Randall, Dante and Becky, where we're dealing with all of those things, getting into the meat and potatoes of Dante's story, because what I kind of like is the fact that Randall's going on about how he's remaking his story, his life. It's Dante's story. It really is Dante's story, and that's what's great about the film, and that's what you come to realize. And it's just, like, they don't force that on you, but I love the character relationship moments of this movie. When he's talking to Becky, when him and Randall get heart to heart, those scenes I put up to a 4 out of 5 any day of the week, possibly a 4.5 out of 5, because if you can make me cry in a Clerks movie, you have absolutely done it. Don't get me wrong, I didn't cry, but I was very close. I just kept thinking about the stuff that came before it, and that stopped me from crying. So I tell you what, we'll just go down the middle, and we will go for a straight 3 out of 5. No, I don't want to do that. We'll go 3.5 out of 5. We'll give it the benefit, 3.5 out of 5. Who knows, I may watch this movie again in a couple of days' time, and I might fall in love with it for a completely different reason, because I've got it all out of my system. So I'm going to give this movie, Nerdly Out Loud is giving this movie a 3.5 out of 5. Clerks 3, you were good, but you weren't great. There is a movie in there that is phenomenal. Like, could have been Kevin Smith's masterpiece. Unfortunately, I feel like it's going to sit outside my top 3 Kevin Smith movies, which is a shame because I wanted it in there. So with that, I'm going to go. Do stick with me for 2 minutes, because Kevin Smith, I need to give you some flowers for one thing. Well, a couple of things, but one thing in particular. Yeah, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe, ding that bell. I'm sorry if I've been a bit negative in this or a bit flip-floppy in this, but this is a movie that just had all my emotions stirred up in a way that, at times I was angry, at times I was really happy, and at times I was really sad, but happy sad, if you know what I mean. So it did a little bit of everything. Please do all those things. Like, subscribe, ding that bell, tell your friends if that's the least you can do. Come back for more videos, more reviews, more of all of this. But I've got one last thing I want to talk about, but I'm going to play the outro, and then I'll be back. Stuck around, I have just one thing that I really want to address, and it is probably, in Kevin Smith's career to date, all the movies he's made to date, this was the best decision he has ever made. It was absolutely stunning. It was beautiful. It was a choice that I didn't see coming, but then when it happened, I felt stupid for not seeing it coming. So there's a scene towards the end of the movie where Dante takes a bit of a fall, and he ends up sort of in a dream state, you might say, and Becky comes to see him. And he's in a cinema, and Becky comes and sits down beside him, and they're watching a movie. Now, the movie they're watching is the movie that Randall's making. It's set up that way that it's the movie Randall's making, and he's getting to watch the finished product. And then when the camera turns around and shows you the movie on the screen, it is Clerks. It's Clerks. It's the original movie with Dante as young as he was. It's perfection. That. I think that's why at times I feel like I'm being harsh on the movie, but I think that's because there's just a lot of chaff. Is chaff a word? There's a lot of chaff that you kind of have to go through to get to these emotional payoffs, these emotional beats. And it feels like we're just spinning our wheels for most of the movie to get to these points. And it's like, dude, Forget about the filler. Forget about the silly, inane stuff that we don't need. Let's just build our story around this relationship, around these characters, which I know we've done, but I don't know. Am I asking too much? Am I asking too much? I think I'm asking too much. This movie would have got a much higher rating from me if the rest of it hit as hard as this scene did. Because this scene was the one that had me almost just bubbling. And then they follow it up with a couple more scenes with Randall, Jeff Anderson. I've seen interviews with Jeff Anderson where he claims not to be an actor. He claims to be scared of trying to act, and given any scenes that don't include dick and fart jokes are not for him because he's not an actor. Jeff Anderson, you are an actor. You're an incredible actor. And when you hit those moments in that hospital, Jesus, not the bit at the start, towards the end, when you hit those moments, you are just so good. You are so good. But yeah, when we see the footage of the movie, and it's the original movie, it's actual clips from the original movie, it's perfection. It was an inspired decision. It really was. And I want to give Kevin Smith massive props on that, because I wasn't expecting it. You know, like, you kind of thought that if they were going to do this, you're going to see the movie they were making, like them now, making that movie now. It was going to be the footage they were filming throughout this movie. I really thought that that's what was going to happen. So when you don't get that, and it makes those scenes smack even harder, because not only are you in this emotional moment in the movie, but you're now back watching them when they were young. And it just destroys you. Absolutely destroys you. And yeah, so huge props to that choice. It was a wonderful choice. You nearly made up for absolutely everything in that one moment, and I do think this is some of those scenes, that the good emotional scenes is the best stuff Kevin Smith has ever written and possibly will ever write. I don't know. Possibly. Loved it. We've got to have those same jokes and retread those same threads, and that's a shame. I didn't need all of that, just so you know. I didn't need all of that. Glad it was in there. I had a good time with the movie. I did have a good time with the movie, but I'm sticking with a 3.5 out of 5 on this. But for those scenes, my friend, you destroyed me. You broke my heart. And I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. What a guy. What an inspired choice to show that footage at that point. Getting emotional just thinking about it. So yeah, I'm going to let you go. Please do check out Clerks 3. If you're a fan of Kevin Smith, if you're a Kevin Smith diehard, you're going to love this movie. Personally, I kind of just wanted a little bit more in the way of growth. I don't know why we had to retread some of the same stuff. I don't know why we had to relearn some of the stuff. I don't know why these characters had to relearn some of this stuff. It just felt a little bit, come on, let's grow. We're at the point where we need to grow. But yes, check out the movie. It's a great little flick. You will have fun with it, and at times there's a possible chance you're going to cry. And at the end of the day, that's all any movie needs to do.